Hey y'all, my name is Grace and welcome to Grace Adventures. If you read the title of this video, I will tell you one thing's for sure. It is not clickbait. Busch Gardens Tampa is my home park, and since getting back into coasters in August of 2024, I have never seen something, let alone a theme park besides Six Flags over Georgia, crash so badly because of its leadership. And I feel like I cannot sit back and not talk about this. Will I get hate for this video? Maybe, but I don't really care because I feel like I cannot be quiet about this anymore. Like, I can't sit idly back while I see the park that I grew up in just rubble in the ruins that it's in already. And I'm not even talking about them getting rid of nostalgia like Stanley Falls Flume or Scorpion. I'm talking about the current day park management. Like, I literally grew up going to this park during the Anheuser-Busch era. Scorpion is the coaster that got me into loving coasters, and I have so many memories at this park. Since starting my coaster count about a year and a half ago, I have been talking and documenting most of the things happening at Busch Gardens Tampa through my other social media platforms. And with the help of other coaster content creators in our community, I have been able to document the modern downfall of Busch Gardens Tampa. So let's begin. The first thing I want to talk about is when this downfall truly started. And I am very much predicting it started after the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. When Busch opened back up from the lockdowns, one thing I saw visually changed was the dueling stations in Cheetah Hunt and SheiKra. From what people have told me and what I recall prior to the lockdowns, I have not seen Busch Gardens attempt to use their dueling stations even during the busy season since opening back up from the lockdown. Now, in 2020, at first, I get it. If you're spacing everyone out, if you have to make reservations, if you have limited employees, a dueling station is probably the last thing on your mind. That should be like the most irrelevant thing ever, right? Well, they haven't used the dueling stations since opening back up from the lockdowns, which shows that they're just cutting back costs. That means cutting back the number of trains that could be on the track, the more maintenance that they have to put into these rides, and the more staffing they have to pay to manage these dueling stations. And that leads me to my first point regarding the modern downfall of Busch Gardens Tampa: private equity. When Busch Gardens first opened back up in 1959, it opened as an Anheuser-Busch brewery tour and botanical garden full of free beer and beautiful birds. Oh my gosh. Fast forward to 2009, Anheuser-Busch InBev sold Busch Entertainment Corporation to a private equity firm called Blackstone Group. This included the SeaWorld parks, the Busch Parks, and other family attractions. As of today in 2026, Hill Path Capital, another private equity group, is the majority shareholder of United Parks and Resorts. Private equity is notorious for cutting costs while making things more expensive, which is visible today with Busch Gardens Tampa. For example, Busch Gardens Tampa just implemented paid lockers for one of its most popular roller coasters, Iron Gwazi, which has now turned this coaster into an upcharged attraction. To rent a locker, it's either $4 for 2 hours or $12 for the entire day. The biggest reason for this shift is that people still had things out like their phones or other loose articles, and those things can easily fly out and hit other people. And on top of that, people did not take advantage and put their small items in the zipper pouches below the ride seats, or they didn't have something on like a fanny pack or zippered pockets. For one, almost every single person approves of having mandatory lockers, and I don't know a single person who doesn't like that idea. If you look at Universal just an hour and a half away, aka its competitors, they have free lockers for small items on rides like Velocicoaster, Stardust, Hiccups, Wing Gliders, and so many more. As someone who frequents to theme parks alone, I carry limited things just so I don't have to pay for a locker every time I go. So why not do the same as Universal and create great guest satisfaction? I'll answer that in a second, but another attraction within the park to note as an upcharged attraction is the Sky Ride. Luckily, if you're a pass holder from Fun Card to Platinum, you don't have to pay to ride the Sky Ride. But if you're visiting with a one-day pass, you are charged $5 to ride it only one way. It was closed for a while during COVID and was under standing but not operating status for several years. And they didn't communicate anything until like 2021, where the only thing they did was put a sign in the front entrance saying that it was going to return in 2022. Well, that didn't happen because in 2023, Busch Gardens put on their social media accounts that the Sky Ride would be returning, but with no confirmed date. But in a video, we visually saw someone cleaning it, so that was a good sign. Then it finally opened back up in February 2024, and that was when the upcharge was added. For both of these upcharges, for the Iron Gwazi lockers and the Sky Ride, Busch has not said why they did it in the first place. For the Sky Ride, I can only imagine because the manufacturer Von Roll is defunct, so parts are hard to get but also expensive. And they are just making non-pass holders pay off however much it costs for them to fix the Sky Ride. That last part I added was just my theory. For Iron Gwazi, since this affects everyone, including pass holders, I just don't think they care about guest satisfaction enough, and the greed just shows through it all. Researching the people who made the lockers for not only Iron Gwazi, but the entire park, it's a provider called Venue Plus, and they straight up said on their website, Venue Plus delivers full service solutions that are great for guests, optimized for operators, and profitable for partners. Again, profitable for partners. And under the GoPod Advanced Locker System, which is the one Busch uses, it says, for virtually anywhere you want to drive revenue. Like, they're really not hiding this. They're really not hiding their greed, guys. They are in it for the money and not the guest satisfaction. If they really wanted to, they could have installed a free locker system because the same company has a dual pod double-sided locker system like what Velocicoaster has, for example. On top of all of this, Busch Gardens Tampa has had 4 park presidents since August of 2023. Neil Thurman left in August 2023, replaced by Stuart Clark, who returned to the role. Stuart left in early October 2024. Then they did not transfer Jeff Davis from SeaWorld San Antonio to Busch Gardens Tampa until February 2025. Then their most recent park president, Brian Basia, only lasted 4 months as park president before leaving for a job as the VP of Legoland Florida, which, respect, that sounds like a great role, I'm not gonna lie. 4 park presidents in a 2-year time span is absolutely insane. Yeah, I remember the social media team hyping up Jeff Davis, and I don't even recall them talking about the other park presidents, even Brian. I also remember meeting Brian for a brief second when Kumba just opened back up, but yeah. And as of me filming this video, there is still no park president for Busch Gardens Tampa. I also want to add this. There was this crazy incident that happened in August of 2025. One of the main dining halls, Dragonfire Grill, was forced to close during park hours, forcing guests to leave the eatery due to risks to public health and safety. Let me read some of these reasons out to y'all on why they closed during park hours. So the Florida DPPR rated these issues as basic, intermediate, and high priority. And let me just read the basic out to y'all first. There are 7 of them. Dead roaches on the premises, employee beverage container on a food preparation table or over next to clean equipment utensils corrected on site. Floor soiled, has accumulation of debris. Non-food contact surface soiled with grease, food debris, dirt, slime, or dust. old food stuck to clean dishware utensils, old labels stuck to food containers after cleaning on metal pans on a dish drying rack, and reuse of single service or single use articles, pickle bucket used to store marinade. Okay, here is the one intermediate one. Spray bottle containing toxic substance, not labeled with pink liquid at prep table on cook's line. Corrected on site. Okay, and now here is the high priority list. There are 6 different issues with this one, so strap in, y'all. Employee touching ready to eat food with their bare hands. Live small flying insects, found 4 flies flying around the kitchen. Raw animal food stored over not properly separated from ready to eat food, corrected on site. Roach activity present as evidenced by live roaches found. Time temperature control for safety food other than whole meat roast, corrected on site. And this is the worst one of them all, guys. Save the worst for last. Stop sale issued due to adulteration of food product. Employees stirring coleslaw using gloves. Hands submerged in coleslaw 5 inches past gloves. What? What? What is this, guys? Okay, guys, I'm pretty sure that 5 inches past the gloves is really close to your elbow. So we're just gonna see how deep this person's arm was in the coleslaw. Oh my gosh. Boom. Okay, get my elbow up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom. Okay. It's a really long glove, actually. But if we start here, I mean, it's not at exactly my elbow. Like, as you can see, it's not exactly at my elbow. But how do you get your arm this deep in coleslaw? Like, how is that possible? Like, what were you doing? Yeah, I don't know what to say other than that it's pretty explainable why Dragonfire Grill closed during park hours for public safety and their health. That's why. That's one of the reasons why. Anyways, on to our next subject. The second thing I would like to highlight is the many ride closures. I visited Busch Gardens Tampa about once a week in 2025, and I genuinely can't recall a day I visited where every single ride was open. Probably the best days of Busch Gardens Tampa in 2025 were actually on my birthday in July, when like everything besides Kumba was open and we did the behind the scenes coaster tour. And when my friend was in town in early October, everything was open besides Falcon's Fury. And they recently just closed the Stanley Falls Flume a couple weeks earlier. And part of the reason why every single thing was not open at once was because Kumba was standing but not operating until September of 2025. And Cheetah Hunt was also standing but not operating starting in October. And we will get to that baby in a second. There was a total of 18 days in 2025 where all the rides were operating at once. And part of that was Kumba reopened on September 27th and Cheetah Hunt's closure started on October 29th, 2025. The one thing about Busch Gardens Tampa is that they do not put on their website when and how long ride closures are. Like during January to around early March, SheiKra is on its annual maintenance cycle, and that's okay. Typically, January through March is the average theme park's off season, and with the northern parks, that's when they do all of their needed repairs to prep for the warmer months. Busch Gardens Tampa is a year-round park. They are open 365 days a year, and it's okay if a coaster has to get repairs done to it, dead season or not. That's allowed. It's okay. I mean, it has to happen eventually, but just be open and communicate about it. It's the fact that Reddit, unfortunately, is 10 times more reliable than Busch Gardens' website. And I'm gonna show y'all a couple of these posts. I keep getting lied to about ride closures. Like, that's insane. So I called customer service to see what the deal was. I had to lie and pretend I was buying something when we already have our tickets. And the lady on the phone who barely spoke English told me she's at the park and has up-to-date info and that I was wrong and that all the rides were open. Customer service by phone is not local. It is national. They have no clue what is open at the park. Calling them is a waste of your time. Makes complete sense considering they used to be really good about posting on their website which rides were closed, and a couple years ago, they suddenly removed that, and it had just say check the app, which is never up to date. One of the 5603232 reasons I canceled my pass a couple months ago. I wanted to point this one out first because this just shows that call centers do not know what is happening at Busch Gardens. And they are just flat out unaware about ride openings and closures. Their call centers are actually outsourced by a company called Alicora. Their call centers are located nowhere in Florida, let alone the United States. So no freaking wonder they don't know what's happening. Here's another one. My Busch Gardens Tampa first time experience summed up in one photo. And a photo is a sign outside of Cobras Curse and it says, "We are working to get this ride open as quickly as possible. We thank you for your patience." So what they're saying is that pretty much everything was closed. And then someone said, "You should have looked at Reddit before you wasted so much money. Busch Gardens Tampa has been on the decline for quite a while. I'm sorry you wasted your time and money." I feel the same way. Like, I'm sorry that you guys go to Busch Gardens unaware of what is open and what is closed. Or y'all just randomly pick a bad day to go to Busch Gardens. And I'm sorry that you just waste your time and money at that park. Like, I really am. Like, why don't they just, I don't know. I don't know, guys. I don't know. This one, I believe, is from when Iron Gwazi was on one train for a little bit in 2025. And it was on one train till Thanksgiving time to early December. Iron Gwazi single train ops on a Saturday? Let me say, I visually remember Iron Gwazi being on one train the very first night of Hollow Scream, which is starts in early September, and I remember the line for Iron Gwazi being just really long. I know the operations at the park have been questionable lately, to say the least, but the queue time is stupidly long considering there aren't that many people in line. It would be different if it were a weekday and the park closed at 5 p.m. like they have been, but I suppose I expected a bit more from Busch Gardens, especially with their Halloween event going on and drawing more crowds to the park. And someone commented, "Word going around is single train ops until at least December. The park's maintenance budget is being slashed in half." To answer your question, yes, this is the new norm. Hillpath Capital's goal is to put as little money in as possible into the park's overall operating budget. They've already announced this year that they are going to be cutting back even more budget, so I'm guessing the maintenance budget being slashed is a direct consequence of that. And honestly, I see that and I'm not really surprised. This one says, "Called yesterday and they said all rides were open, by the way." Yeah, psych. The final one I want to show y'all is from March 2025. First time visit review, Friday, March 7th, 2025. First, the good. Cobras Curse and Montu were awesome, more than worth the long wait, and rode Montu twice. It may be one of my favorite inverted coasters. Same. Now for the bad. As you can see from my pictures, everything else was closed. They eventually opened Phoenix Rising, and I saw safari trucks running. Also, Cheetah Hunt briefly opened and we ran to get in line, waited over an hour, then it broke again before we got on. Not shown is the Shirley employee, turning everyone away from Iron Gwazi. That ride didn't have a sign, just a cranky gatekeeper who didn't know if it would be open later or open tomorrow or if it was open yesterday. If you want to read more of these, just go to Reddit and just visit the Busch Gardens Tampa community. because it's so much of the same problems over and over again. And the whole point of me showing y'all all of these is that these people feel like their money is being wasted because Busch Gardens is not communicating about ride closures. One example of this is that the very first time Busch Gardens Tampa communicated about Kumba's sailing but not operating status was like 7 months after its closure on their social media pages. Bro, 7 months is insane. When Cheetah Hunt first opened back up from its 100-ish day closure, the first time I saw Busch Gardens Tampa communicate about its closure was when they posted about it on their Instagram story, and it was literally a meme. And it's like their fans were asking about the status on these rides, and it's like, why can't you give it to us? We just want to know what's going on. And coasters and theme parks are my hobby, but for my day job, I work in communications and marketing. And if I was head of communications for Busch Gardens Tampa, hypothetically, and multiple people were calling and asking about these closures, I'd be saying something. Why don't they communicate about these closures? Or at least give frequent updates like, please stay patient, we are currently working on this ride. We expect it to be open by so-and-so. If not, we will keep you up to date. It's that easy. Like whoever is in charge of Busch Gardens communication and what is allowed to go out, they are not doing a good job at communicating what needs to be communicated in order to keep good guest satisfaction. I'm so sorry. At the end of the day, people just want to know what rides are going to be open and closed. And that brings me to my third point, ride issues. Now let's take a blast to the past to the closure of Scorpion. Scorpion is a Schwarzkopf modeled coaster that opened at Busch Gardens in 1980 and closed down in September 2024. I got this confirmed by people on the final day this ride operated because I was not there for flat tire reasons. Scorpion closed at 4:30 due to the weather, and when the weather cleared up minutes before the park closed, everyone got back in line, you know, to try and get the final ride on Scorpion. Well, Busch management decided to close the ride with the park and didn't allow people or ACE, American Coaster Enthusiast members, who paid for individual quick queues to get their final rides. There was no celebration and everyone left in a miserable mood, and even the employees were upset. For me, hearing about this is absolutely devastating and sad. They actually kept Scorpion up for a good couple of months until they tore it down in May of 2025. I assume that they were trying to find a buyer for the ride and they gave themselves a deadline to do it, but it just didn't happen. I want to add on to this just to get it out of the way, but the closure for the Stanley Falls Flume the following year in September of 2025, there wasn't a celebration from Busch either, but it was way better than what Scorpion sounded like, at least in my experience. Stanley Falls Flume opened up in 1973, and it was to date their oldest attraction, and now that award goes to the Sky Ride. Anyways, what's really cool is that one of the ride-ups of the Stanley Falls Flume, they made bracelets specifically for the last day. And if you were one of the final riders, you might have gotten one of them. Myself and a couple of others also got an evac off the ride on its final day, which is absolutely insane, and it's something I'll never forget. The ride-ups were super chill as well, and they kept the line open past the park closure since it was its final day. And we got to stay after and take pictures and everything. So it was a fun little send-off because I got to spend it with other coaster and theme park enthusiasts. The flume got torn down a couple months later in November, and I assume they are prepping for a new ride that I assume is going to be open in 2027. I don't think they were trying to sell the ride or anything because it's a really, really old ride, but I think they'll just sell parts or just have other parks use other parts of that ride because It's an old Aero Flume model and not many of them exist anymore. And I do have a video talking about that whole situation, so link in my bio. Okay, now let's get into the tea of Kumba, Wild Oasis, and Cheetah Hunt. And yeah, the tea is brewing a little bit. Kumba first closed in November 2024, and this was a couple months after Scorpion became defunct. So this was something that was a little bit unexpected. For one, Kumba is one of the most cycled B&M coasters since its opening in 1993. So this is a pretty old ride. A lot of people thought that they were gonna take out Kumba because of the track, sinkholes, and many other maintenance issues that went along with it. The best way I could describe Kumba during its standing but not operating status is that it looked like it was rotting before my eyes, and that was before they started maintenance on the ride. And like I said earlier, it took Busch Gardens 7 months to communicate that this was going to be open during the summertime. When you think of summer, you think of the months June, July, and August when kids are not in school. But this did not open till September after the Stanley Falls Flume closed. The reasoning I heard on why Kumba opened after the closure of the Stanley Falls Flume was that some of the ride-offs would be transferred over to Kumba and be trained there as well. But to be honest, even though it didn't open during like peak summertime in like June, July, or August, I would rather it open late and be safe rather than it open early and be unsafe. But Busch Gardens still lacked transparency about this. It received a lot of maintenance repairs, like on the lift hill, part of the Cobra roll with the sinkholes in the track, and it also received some paint jobs. Kumba is running great now, and I highly encourage y'all to ride it while you can, because who knows when they'll actually shut this ride down. Now with Wild Oasis back in 2025, Wild Oasis is literally just a revamped area from the treetop trails when Jambalaya first opened back up in 2008. Long story short, Treetop Trails and Jungle Flyer closed in February of 2018. This was due to supposed cost-cutting measures. The park spokesperson at the time quoted, "We regularly evaluate the guest flow and experience in the various areas of the park, and in our effort to always work on improving our guest experience, we have temporarily closed the area and will be evaluating how we can make improvements in the future." Wild Surge, which is now Treetop Drop, operated sporadically since the closure of Treetop Trails and the Jungle Flyer, and in December of 2022, Wild Surge was damaged by fire. It looked like the whole area had just been standing but not operating. Since the opening of Jambalaya in 2008, this has been essentially the main draw to the area. Not to say that the Bengal Bistro turned into a Chick-fil-A in 2021, or the animals are bad additions to the area, but since the closure of Treetop Trails, that area in Jambalaya has mostly been a place you just walk past to get into one area or the next, if you're not interested in the Tiger Lodge or looking at the orangutans. On top of that, it's also located at the back of the park. Well, anyways, Treetop Trails, now Wild Oasis, is essentially just an older kids play area. Too old for Sesame Street, but too young for some of the bigger rides, like maybe like Kumba, Montu, or Shikra. And even as an adult, it can be fun, but nothing worth spending a lot of time over there for. Well, anyways, besides the history of Treetop Trails, Wild Oasis, this revamped area of Wild Oasis, literally got delayed twice, and it didn't even open till the end of July, when it was actually supposed to open in late May, early June. For this delayed opening, I thought it was a little bit silly because there weren't that many new things about this area besides maybe the thematic changes and minor repairs that it needed. So I think calling this area all new instead of revamped is a little bit of an understatement. And having it delayed towards the end of the summertime was kind of a letdown. I mean, same with Kumba. I would say the only reason this area of the land got delayed was that something was wrong with the animal habitats, but that's the only logical reason I could think of. Lastly, I want to talk about the status of Cheetah Hunt and why it was down for the Christmas season in 2025 and going into 2026. Cheetah Hunt went down in late October towards the end of Hollow Scream. And the most logical reason for Cheetah Hunt to all of a sudden stop working is that they were awaiting parts for the coaster. Cheetah Hunt is manufactured by Intamin, and their parts come from out of the country, and I bet the parts were also super expensive as well. I feel like since this is one of Busch's more complex rides, the problems for Cheetah Hunt just kept dropping one after the other. And it just had to be under the knife for a while. It just needed lots of love and attention to get taken care of. In August of 2025, the train was stuck in the mid-course for a couple of weeks. August is still considered to be the summertime slowing down. So it being closed back then, I don't think it was considered to be as big of a deal when it closed towards the end of Hollow Scream. But later on, it's the fact that this coaster was closed during one of the busiest times of the year for Busch Gardens. During their Christmas break, this is like a peak season time for families. And it's also literally one of their most popular family rides. Busch never communicated to their guests anything regarding Cheetah Hunt being closed, and just like Kumba, people kept asking about it. It finally opened back up in the late afternoon of February 7th, 2026, which made it around 100 days without Cheetah Hunt running. I'm glad that they got it back up and running.
Okay, hey besties, it is February 19th. Just a little update on Cheetah Hunt. It is closed again. What the flip, guys? It is closed again. It ran for like 2 days and it has been closed pretty much ever since. So what is going on with this roller coaster? So just wanted to let you guys know that.
And now I just think they need to focus on Falcon's Fury. I mean, Falcon's Fury has been down for a fat minute too, and it's also manufactured by Intamin, just like how Cheetah Hunt is. And so what I'm guessing and what I'm theorizing of why Falcon's Fury has been down for so long is these parts they're just taking their sweet precious time to come ship in. So that's just my guess. And after Falcon's Fury is open, I'm just hoping and praying we get more consistent days in the parks where everything is operating and open at once. So we're hoping for a good 2026 here, guys. With all the negativity that I'm spewing, I also want to give some positives about the park because I do love Busch Gardens Tampa. Firstly, in my opinion, the comfort collars off of Tigress was such an amazing thing to do. I was actually one of the first people to report on this, and I think one of the first coaster enthusiasts to experience Tigress without the comfort collars. If y'all watched my Skyrocket 2 video, y'all know how much I don't like comfort collars, but this ride was 10 times better without it. This ride really didn't go up in my rankings without the comfort collars, but what I can say is that I enjoy this ride a lot more now. Second, I want to highlight that they actually opened Kumba back up. I know I harped on the ways things went about in terms of Kumba's closure and the way Busch went about it, but I don't think I would be the coaster enthusiast I am today without the classic B&M coasters like Kumba. When Busch announced their pass holder previews, I showed up on a random Wednesday before I went into work to be one of the first public riders on Kumba. And on top of being one of the first public riders to ride Kumba again, I rode it 25 more times. I met and I talked with new people, and that was just a fun and exciting day. And I think that is definitely one of my favorite memories of 2025, and why I'm a bit more bold to just let loose and do a lot more crazy things. And that's kind of one of my goals for this year, but anyways, that was such an amazing day, and it's something that I'll never forget. Another thing that I want to highlight is that they actually give you a warning before they're about to permanently close major rides. Unlike Six Flags, when they merged with Cedar Fair and with King de Ka, for example, they did not announce the ride closure of King de Ka. They gave a warning for the ride closure of Scorpion about 2 weeks in advance. And unfortunately, like I said, I couldn't go because I had a flat tire to deal with. But because of that public announcement, I did have a chance to ride the Stanley Falls Flume one last time. I was able to plan that day out to make sure I was able to visit Busch Gardens to get some of my final rides in. And because of that, I was one of the last public riders towards the end of the day, past park closing time. I talked about the wristband earlier, and that wristband, it does mean a lot to me because that ride is just full of memories for me. And that last day at Stanley Falls Flume was just something I'll never forget. And I'm just super happy to be a part of history. One more positive thing I want to highlight has to do with my favorite roller coaster, Montu. Montu has a new train on the tracks, Train 4, and it's super smooth, but it's not like I don't not like Train 3. I still love Train 3. Both of them produce really smooth rides still. But I'm super happy they are taking care of our older B&M coasters, because I feel like without them, and once the B&M coasters go away from Busch Gardens, like SheiKra, Kumba, and Montu, I feel like once those are gone, it's gonna feel so weird. So it's really good to appreciate those coasters while you can. Y'all, as I conclude this video, at the end of the day, this is the last video I wanted to make. Genuinely, I don't want to criticize Busch Gardens because I love Busch Gardens. I grew up going to this park, but like I said at the beginning of this video, like I just can't sit quietly about it anymore. And I feel like it's to the point where this is just ruining our park. I think the overall issues of bad communication and bad park management, they desperately need to invest into this park. And I feel like if they invest just not just money, but just love and time and just making it what it used to be in terms of the overall Anheuser-Busch experience, I feel like there will be a better guest satisfaction. I don't think Busch Gardens has to bank on nostalgia at all. I just feel like they need to make the general park goers happy, and the general park goers need to feel like that they're not wasting their time and money by going to this park. This park is a place where I have found some of my best friends, and my favorite roller coasters are at this park, and I love visiting Busch Gardens just to escape from a stressful week. I'm sure that there is a lot more going on with Busch Gardens, rumor-based or not, but if I'm being real, this park deserves the love that it once got when it was led and owned by Anheuser-Busch themselves. And I hope it does receive that love in the coming future, because I want to keep coming to this park and supporting this park. But it's been getting really hard lately as someone who's grown up coming here. I hope you enjoyed this video. And I also appreciate you guys watching till the end of this video. That means a lot to me. Anyways, y'all, thank y'all for watching Grace Adventures, where every day is a ride, and may your next adventure be epic.